I don't think that success is like a lot of people believe it is, and for any really successful person. I think that everybody's always struggling. And what happens is, you just struggle at a higher level. It's like learning how to ski or play some sport, and you're just kind of doing this higher thing, but it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like I'm struggling. And I think it's, and it's a good feeling. The way I think of it is, I've always thought that it's like, in order to be successful in life, you have to cross a jungle. Or you could stay on the other side of the jungle and not cross the jungle. But if you choose to cross the jungle has all sorts of things that can do you harm and bite you and everything along those lines. And so the best way to do that is to go into that with people who can see things differently and watch themselves and struggle to make it to the other side. And then what I've discovered along the way is that it's always a struggle, and I enjoy being in the jungle. I don't want to get to the underside. I don't want to get out. So that's what it feels like to me.
Then what's your advice to these small business founders today?
Work hard. You're going to need some luck, but the harder you work, the luckier you get. And if it doesn't work out, that's not the end of the world. I just don't have anything in common with people that sit there and say, oh my God, it was terrible. It was terrible. It's water over the dam, under the bridge. Get on with it and start another business the next day or another career. And be honest, look in a mirror and say, why didn't it work out? Well, it wasn't the skill set, or I didn't have the temperament for it, or I was in the wrong place, wrong time. Maybe I can afford to do it again, maybe I can't. But people aren't honest with themselves. What I've always done is I've taken a yellow pad, I draw a line down the middle, write out the pros on one side, the cons on another, in a sense that if I let you see it, you wouldn't laugh at me. And then when I get done, I just rip it up and throw it away, because I've worked out in my mind what is real and what isn't, and what I can present to people and what I can't.
I think many kids and many grown-ups do figure out over time what their passions are. And sometimes we let I don't think it's that hard. I think what happens though sometimes is that we let our intellectual selves overrule those passions. And so that's what needs to be guarded against. Kids are very good about knowing what their passions are.
Being young and trying things, you're so naive and you don't know any better. All you do is learn. And if you fail, it doesn't matter. And so whether I was 9, 10, 12, 16, 21, the failures were irrelevant. And whether you're 9, 12, 16, 21, 22, 24, I'm sleeping on the couch. I have a car with a hole in the floorboard. I'm living like a bum and like a student. And so what did I have to lose? And so I think that influenced me as much as anything. So it was, my dad was like, go for it. Why not? What have you got to lose? You have to sleep on a different couch. So I think that was motivation.
It's a gift if you can keep your childlike sense of wonder. And it helps with creativity, it helps to have fun. You laugh more and play more if you keep that childlike sense of wonder.
And I think if you believe in what you're doing, many people will tell you, why you're mistaken, why it'll never work. But if you really believe passionately in what you're doing, just keep going, keep pushing on, and until you either succeed or at least you realize that it's just not going to happen. And then if you don't succeed, pick yourself up and try again. And ultimately, if you're that determined, you will succeed in life. And if you don't, you'll have a hell of a lot of fun trying.
I don't think that you can invent on behalf of customers unless you're willing to think long term, because a lot of invention doesn't work. If you're going to invent, it means you're going to experiment. You have to think long term. So these three ideas, customer centricity, long-term thinking, and a passion for invention, those go together. That's how we do it. And by the way, we have a lot of fun doing it that way.
A lot of times my issue is people are not setting goals that will be something that somebody who becomes rich or could do anything. You got to be excited about working on that for 10 years. So you got to have a big enough goal that you attract the best people and you retain them and you keep them focused. And then in my experience, you don't go wrong. Maybe you don't hit it next year, Or maybe you fail entirely and you discover something more exciting to work on with the same set of people.
Do something you're very passionate about, and don't try to chase what is kind of the hot passion of the day. I think we actually saw this, I think you see it all over the place in many different contexts, but I think we saw it in the internet world quite a bit, where, you know, at the sort of peak of the sort of internet, you know, mania in, say, 1999, you found people who were, you know, very passionate about something. They kind of left that job and decided, I'm going to, you know, do something in the internet, because it's, you know, it was almost like the, you know, the 1849 gold rush in a way. I mean, you find that people, if you go back and study the history of the 1849 gold rush, you find that, you know, at that time, everybody who was within shouting distance of California was, you know, they might have been a doctor, but they quit being a doctor and they started panning for gold. And that almost never works. And even if it does work, you know, according to some metric, financial success or whatever it might be, I suspect it leaves you ultimately unsatisfied. So you really need to be very clear with yourself. And I think one of the best ways to do that is this notion of projecting yourself forward to age 80, looking back on your life and trying to make sure you've minimized the number of regrets you have. That works for career decisions, it works for family decisions. You know, do you want, I have a 14-month-old son, and it's very easy for me to, if I think about myself when I'm 80, I know I want to watch that little guy grow up. And so I don't want to be 80 and think, shoot, you know, I missed that whole thing and I don't have the kind of relationship with my son that I wished I had, and so on and so on. So if you think about that, so I guess another thing that I would recommend to people is that they always take a long-term point of view. And I think this is something about which there's a lot of controversy. You know, there's a lot of people, and I'm just not one of them, believe that you should live for the now. I think what you do is you think about the great expanse of time ahead of you and try to make sure that you're planning for that in a way that's going to leave you ultimately satisfied. So this is just this is the way it works for me. And I mean, everybody needs to find that for themselves. So I think there are a lot of paths to satisfaction, and you need to find one that works for you.
I remember asking my dad to, I wanted new basketball shoes because I was a basketball junkie back then. He's like, well, your shoes work. If you want a new pair of tennis shoes, you have to go out there and get a job. And I'm like, Dad, I'm 12 years old, and it just so happens he was playing poker with his buddies, and one of his buddies was like, well, I got a job for you. I've got these garbage bags that we distribute. You can sell them door to door. I'm like, okay. And it was when I was selling them and realizing that I liked to sell and that I could sell, and that I recognized that selling was about providing a service and creating value for people, that I knew that I would, literally back then, I knew that I could always succeed. I mean, I remember I was 16, I think, when I started a stamp company and started going to stamp shows and trade shows and just working a little bit harder than other people and trading up from one stamp to the next. I remember one time I started with a quarter and bought a stamp and left with $50, thinking, hey, if I could do this, I could do anything. And it's not that everything worked. I failed a lot, but I never ever felt like I wouldn't be able to work hard enough to succeed.
I think everybody has their own passion, their own thing that they're interested in, and then you're very alert to the things that are in the sphere of influence of that passion.
So your passion has led you to change the world, frankly, with Amazon. But yet you've got Blue Origin, you've got Bezos Explorations. Why can't somebody like you just rest on your laurels? Go play golf.
Well, I love what I do. I also have 4 kids. I have a wife that I love. I have a lot of passions and interests, but one of them is the pace of change. I love the fact that I get to work with these big, smart teams. The people I work with are so smart, and they're self-selected for loving to invent on behalf of customers. And so you know, it's not, do I love every moment of every day? No, that's why they call it work. There's, you know, there are things that I don't enjoy, but if I'm really objective about it and I look at it, I'm so lucky to be working alongside all these passionate people, and I love it.
How do you remain nimble? Because there is somebody in their dorm room who could eat you up for lunch the next day.
You know, my belief on this is, first of all, that's completely correct, and you can never assure anybody that that can't happen. But I think if you have a customer-centric culture, that cures a lot of ills, because we wake up, let's say you're the leader in a particular arena, if you're competitor focused and you're already the leader, then where does your energy come from? Whereas if you're customer focused and you're already the leader, customers are never satisfied. So you always, if you're customer focused, you're always waking up, how can we make that customer say, wow? How can we, you know, our energy, our passion, we want to impress our customers. We want them to say, wow.
One does have to be focused on the short term and money coming in when creating a company, because otherwise the company will die. So I think that a lot of times people think like creating a company is going to be fun. I would say it's not. It's really not that fun. I mean, there are periods of fun, and there are periods of where it's just awful. And particularly if you're the CEO of the company, you actually have a distillation of all the worst problems in the company. There's no point in spending your time on things that are going right. So you only spend your time on things that are going wrong. And there are things that are going wrong that other people can't take care of. So you have like the worst. You have a filter for the crappiest problem in the company, the most pernicious and painful problem. So I wouldn't say I think you have to feel quite compelled to do it, and have a fairly high pain threshold. And there's a friend of mine who says like starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. And there's some truth to that. The staring into the abyss part is that you're going to be constantly facing the extermination of the company. Because most startups fail. It's like 90%, arguably 99% of startups fail. So that's the staring into the abyss part. You're constantly saying, okay, if I don't get this right, the company will die. It can be quite stressful. And then the eating glass part is you've got to do the problems. You've got to work on the problems that the company needs you to work on, not the problems you want to work on. And so that's you end up working on problems that you'd really wish you weren't working on. And so that's the eating glass part. And that goes on for a long time.
So how do you keep your focus on the big picture when you're constantly faced with, we could be out of business in a month?
Well, it's just a very small percentage of mental energy is on the big picture. Like you know where you're generally heading for, and the actual path is going to be some sort of zigzaggy thing in that direction. And try not to deviate too far from the path that you want to be on, but you're going to have to do that to some degree. But I don't want to diminish the. I mean, I think the profit motive is a good one if the rules of an industry are properly set up. So there's nothing fundamentally wrong with profit. In fact, profit just means that people are paying you more for whatever you're doing than you're spending to create it. That's a good thing. and if that's not the case, then you'll be out of business, and rightfully so. Because you're not adding enough value.
My job, one of my jobs as the leader of Amazon, is to encourage people to be bold. And people love to focus on things that aren't yet working. And that's good, it's human nature. That kind of divine discontent can be very helpful. But you really, it's incredibly hard to get people to take bold bets. And you need to encourage that. And if you're going to take bold bets, they're going to be experiments. And if they're experiments, you don't know ahead of time whether they're going to work. Experiments are, by their very nature, prone to failure. But big successes, a few big successes compensate for dozens and dozens of things that didn't work. So, you know, bold bets, AWS, Kindle, Amazon Prime, our third-party seller business, all of those things are examples of bold bets that did work, and they pay for a lot of experiments. I've made billions of dollars of failures at Amazon.com, literally billions of dollars of failures. And you know, you might remember Pets.com or Cosmo, or you know, give myself a root canal with no anesthesia very easily. None of those things are fun, but they also, they don't matter. What really matters is companies that don't continue to experiment, companies that don't embrace failure, they eventually get in a desperate position where the only thing they can do is make a kind of Hail Mary bet at the very end of their corporate existence. Whereas companies that are, you know, making bets all along, even, you know, big bets, but not bet the company bets. I don't believe in bet the company bets. That's when you're desperate. That's the last thing you can do.
We probably spend less money in marketing than any company our size in the world. We have a tiny marketing department, and everyone says, well, why Oracle's, you know, all about sales and marketing. We are the largest employer of MIT and Caltech engineers in the world. We are the largest employer of Stanford and Harvard and CMU mathematicians in the world. We are overwhelmingly dominated by engineering at Oracle. The idea that we are a sales and marketing company, which people will sometimes write about quite often, is ludicrous on the face of it, because all of our customers who buy Oracle already have it. And if you already have Oracle, there's nothing a salesman can tell you about how great it is to make you buy more. GE already uses it. The Defense Department already uses it. All of our customers, 98% of our sales or more, are to existing Oracle customers. If we don't have the right product, people don't buy more. We will, before the acquisition, we spent $3 billion a year in software engineering. The company is all about engineering. It's the only thing that works.
You know, I didn't have as many personal relationships as I probably would have liked. You know, I put personal relationships aside. You know, I had girlfriends where it was like me or your business. And you know, I was like, what was your name again? You know? You think I'm kidding. So I probably took things to an extreme. But yeah, I gave up on personal relationships in a big respect because I really was on a mission. And once I realized I was going, so when I sold my first company, I bought a lifetime pass on American Airlines. And my goal was just to party with like a rock star in as many countries with as many people as I possibly could. Then I went back and got involved in the streaming business. And I remember sitting there and telling, you know, we had probably 10 employees, and look, the streaming thing I think is going to be really big, and so we really have to focus. And there's going to be some sacrifices. And if you're willing to make those sacrifices, let's go. And if you're not, I understand, you know, you make your own decisions. And I was willing to make those sacrifices. And you know, it all turned out great in the long run, but during that time, it wasn't always easy, and it wasn't always, yeah, it was tough sometimes.
Ask everybody to not think in 2 to 3 year time frames, but to think in 5 to 7 year time frames. To not think about, when somebody says to me, congratulates Amazon on a good quarter, which is a very common thing to say. You meet somebody, they're being nice, they looked at your financial results for the quarter, they're like, good quarter. I say thank you, but what I'm thinking to myself is that quarter, those quarterly results were actually pretty much fully baked about 3 years ago. And so like today, I'm working on, you know, a quarter that is going to happen in 2020, not next quarter. Next quarter, for all practical purposes, is done already, and it's probably been done for a couple of years. And so if you start to think that way, it changes how you spend your time, how you plan, where you put your energy, and your ability to look around corners gets better. So many things improve if you can take a long term. By the way, it's not natural for humans, so it's a discipline that you have to build. The kind of, you know, get-rich-slowly schemes are not big sellers on infomercials. You know, and so that's something that you have to sort of steel yourself for, discipline, and teach over time.
The key to, I think, being a good business leader is how good you are with people. I think if you can genuinely care about people, not just your fellow directors, but the cleaning lady, the switchboard operator, everybody throughout the company. If you're a good, if you praise and don't criticize, people will flourish. So I think it's really your people skills that will set you apart. And I don't think that can be overemphasized. I think you just got to, if I'm on a Virgin plane, I will make sure that I always have a notebook in my back pocket. Make sure I get out and talk to all the staff. If they've got issues, make sure I don't just hear the issue and not write it down. Make sure those issues get written down. Talk to the passengers. If they've got issues, make sure those issues get written down.
I advise students, as much as possible, look for the job that you would take if you didn't need a job. I mean, don't sleepwalk through life, and don't say it's all going to be great. I'll do this and I'll do that, and I'm just marking time till I get to be older. That, as I've told people, that's like saving up sex for your old age. I mean, it just is not it is not a good idea. Yeah.
What are you urging them to do?
I'll explain it. Just what I'm talking about. Now, you really want to be doing what you love doing, and you can't necessarily find it on your first job. Right. But don't give up before you find it.
The majority of people wait for the masses to do something. When the masses do something, they join in and they join on board. But they forget that the masses are made up of individuals. Those individuals, each in his own, is extremely powerful. If they realize how powerful they are, if you realize how powerful you are, and what you could do to make a huge difference that affects everybody around you. If you knew your power and what you could achieve, we wouldn't be outsourcing jobs, as the politicians say, to overseas countries. We'd be more than adequate to do it ourselves here, because we'd be 2, 3, 4 times more efficient. It's all about imagining and doing, believing in yourself.
I really need to give some thought to how can I provide advice that would be most helpful, and I'm not sure I've given enough thought to that to give you the best possible answer. But I think certainly being focused on something that you're confident will have high value to someone else, and just being really rigorous in making that assessment. Because people tend to, a natural human tendency is wishful thinking. So a challenge for entrepreneurs is to say, well, what's the difference between really believing in your ideals and sticking to them versus pursuing some unrealistic dream that doesn't actually have merit? And that is a really difficult thing to tell. Can you tell the difference between those two things?
Right.
So you need to be sort of very rigorous in your self-analysis. I think certainly extremely tenacious, and then just work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in, 80 to 100-hour weeks every week.
Gosh.
And then a lot of work. All those things improve the odds of success.
Okay.
Great. I mean, if other people are putting in 40-hour work weeks and you're putting in 100-hour work weeks, then even if you're doing the same thing, you know that in 1 year you will achieve what they achieve. You will achieve in 4 months what it takes them a year to achieve.
So it's easy to have ideas. It's very hard to turn an idea into a successful product. There are a lot of steps in between, and it takes persistence, relentlessness, So I always tell people who are, who think they want to be entrepreneurs, you need a combination of stubborn relentlessness and flexibility. And you have to know when to be which. And basically, you need to be stubborn on your vision, because otherwise it'll be too easy to give up. But you need to be very flexible on the details, because as you go along pursuing your vision, you'll find that some of your preconceptions were wrong, and you're going to need to be able to change those things. So I think taking an idea successfully all the way to the market and turning it into a real product that people care about and that really improves people's lives is a lot of hard work.
You just have to try different things, and even if 99% of them fail, you only have to be right one time. You don't have to figure it all out in advance. You can be wrong, you could pick the wrong career, you can pick the wrong job, you can pick the wrong spouse, you can pick the wrong whatever. But you get it right one time, you're set. But if you don't try, and if you don't go out there and try all those different things, you'll never get that one time. And so it's not a question of, okay, how much different stuff do I do, or how many different things should you try? Try them all. Try them all until you find the one you like. And then it's like, it gets really easy, because even when shit's up, you're on a mission. You're loving what you do, and then it gets easy. And so that's just the approach I've always tried to instill in people who work for me and myself.
Everything I did, I was following something I really cared about, something I loved, something I was passionate about. And I kept following that passion, whether it was cars, whether it was anthropology, whether it was art, photography. And eventually it led me to my huge passion, my real passion, which was making movies, which combined all of those things. And I realized that had I gone on to get my degree in anthropology, I would have probably made anthropological movies in New Guinea or someplace, and eventually been on National Geographic and the History Channel, and been then making features, and I'd have done Star Wars just the same. If I'd have gone to Art Center and become an illustrator, I would have probably started doing animation and doing animated films and making animated things, and then ultimately I would have gone on and been right where I was. So no matter which route I took, because I cared about all of them, they all led to the same place. Had I done what my father had wished me to do, which is to go into the office equipment business with him, which I knew I wasn't going to do, I knew I hated that, my life would have been unpleasant. And so I think it's very important not to do what your peers think you should do, not do what your parents think you should do, or your teachers, but to do what you inside, or even your culture thinks, but do what's inside you.